Hi guys, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're going to look at something which is pretty exciting. First of all, I love divers, I'm sure you do. I love affordable watches, I'm sure you do as well. Personally, I really like supporting British brands too, so when all three of these points amalgamate together into one watch, that's pretty epic. How about when that watch is based on a really cool, significant vintage Seiko? Well, mind blown. This is the AKIO or AKIO AK-01, and this is what we're going to be reviewing today. Let's check it out. So AKIO's founder is called Sebastian, and what he does for a job is he's a firefighter, and he said it's been increasingly difficult for him to find a tough, dependable automatic watch that is tough enough for him and his work. So what he decided to do was he decided to make one. Now, Sebastian actually already runs a pretty successful business based around watches. He runs mksnatostraps.com, which is a very good online store for all of your NATO strap needs. This is not sponsored in any way, by the way. So that's Sebastian's history. What about the name AKIO? Well, it's Japanese for hero, which I think is a very apt name indeed. It gives the notion of giving your everything in life and in your endeavours, and this is exactly what he wants to convey in his watches. So secondly, I'm sure you'll notice that the actual model name, Uemura, is quite unusual as well. So where does that come from? Well, first of all, the watch itself is an homage to the Seiko the Willard, which is actually the Seiko 6105. Why is it called the Willard? Well, it was famously worn by Martin Sheen's character, Captain Willard, in the film Apocalypse Now, hence the name. Seiko have actually made their own modern version of the Willard, because the original Willard was made between 1970 and 1977. Seiko have made their own version of the Willard. It's the Seiko SPB 151, but it's not really in the affordable category because it's around the £1,000 mark. So the name Uemura is based on Naomi Uemura, who was the first person to reach the North Pole solo in 1978. What was he wearing? Well, none other than, of course, the Seiko 6105, which was securely strapped to his wrist on many more extreme expeditions as well, before his tragic and premature death in 1984, one day after turning 43. So what we have here is a well thought out brand, well thought out model name as well, aiming towards a go anywhere, do anything ethos. But does it deliver? Especially considering the RRP is a very reasonable £195. Let's check it out. Now at £195, the specs certainly aren't something to be sniffed at. First of all, you get the Seiko NH35 movement. Yes, it is cheap and not particularly glamorous, but it is very hardworking, very reliable as well, and I find it in probably about 90 to 95% of affordable divers at the moment. So I think it's a suitable pick for a watch costing under £200. You get 200 meters water resistance as well, which is very good for a watch of this price. 20mm lug width, year warranty as well, and on the bracelet it comes in at 169 grams, so it does feel pretty weighty and pretty good quality on the wrist when you're handling it. So how does it wear then? Well, whilst the 42.7mm diameter might sound like it'll wear large, it actually doesn't, thanks to the very short lug to lug length when you take into the diameter into comparison. 46.6mm that is. So there isn't any actual real out and out lugs. The case is a sort of tonneau shape and the lugs are integrated into it. And it's the same for the height as well, 13.2mm. It doesn't sound like the thinnest watch going, which of course it isn't, but it does wear with it does have a deceptively low profile and fits really nicely on my 7-inch wrist as well. It's very comfortable indeed, and it feels great on. What struck me most is the beautifully clear sapphire crystal. It has a lovely beveled edge around the edge of it, which intermingles with the glossy ceramic bezel insert just adjacent to it. The outer edge of the bezel also has a polished rim where the effective grip meets it. This really lovely ceramic bezel insert is another great aspect of a watch, only costing less than £200. Ceramic bezel inserts aren't cheap, and they're also pretty difficult to get spot on as well. Sometimes you can find the markings are a little bit grubby, not quite well engraved enough when you look at them really up close. However, when you do check it out up close, the markings on the AKIO AK-01 are very accurately executed, which is a good thing. The glossiness, you know, that glossy factor of having a ceramic bezel insert as well, is very eye-catching, reflecting the light in a very lovely way, especially when you consider the other aspects on the dial, the case as well, the finishing, but we'll touch on them in a moment. Just before we do move on, it leads us onto the loom. So BGW9 has been used on the bezel, and C3 Luminova has been used on the watch dial, so on the hour hands and also on the hands and also on the hour markers. The strength is pretty reasonable, to be honest. I'd never expect above and beyond strength loom for a watch costing 200 quid or so, but it is, as you'd expect, maybe, you know, a bit better than you'd expect. So the overall finishing of the watch then, it is perfectly acceptable for a watch costing this much. In fact, you know, when you consider it, it's actually pretty great. In particular, the join where the brushed finishing meets the polished finishing, very clean and crisp. The finishing from top to bottom is all very uniform and neat too. The screw-in polished case back is a little bit plain, if I'm honest, but you know, let's keep in mind the price. The screw-in crown is located at 4, neatly nestled around this very unique surround, which provides plenty of character and a great protection as well. You know, it's basically a massive crown guard, but again, really unique in its design. The crown has the AKIO logo engraved on the end, and the grip is also really good as well. It may be a little bit tricky to use because of how much is actually available to twist. However, I don't find it a big issue at all. I find it pretty straightforward to use and unscrew and screw back in. Now the AKIO AK-01 is available in 2 colours at the moment, black and blue. Now whilst I can't say for certain about the black one, because obviously I've only got the blue version here, what I can say for the blue is that it has a really lovely sunburst effect, a backdrop to the dial, which really does catch the light really nicely when you consider all the other aspects of the dial as well, like the polished surrounds to the hour markers, also the polished aspects of the hands and the date window too. Really does create a lovely array of reflections here, loads of light bouncing off all the different parts of the dial. Of course, it works alongside the glossy ceramic bezel insert as well, so you really do get a really nice viewing experience with this watch. And when you look at the dial, you know, it is more or less a direct homage to that Seiko 6105. This does open the slightly sticky subject of homages. Some people can't stand them. Personally, I don't mind them. I can live with them completely. It doesn't bother me at all. Obviously, replicas, fakes, that's illegal. That's a different subject altogether. However, homages, very different thing. Either way, it has that unmistakable, very cool, vintage, retro vibe of that original Seiko. Obviously, it was designed and built in the 70s, so you do have that unmistakable 70s feel to this watch, which in modern times is actually really popular at the moment. It is extremely legible thanks to the very bold hour markers, those big chunky pencil hands as well, and I really like the design feature on the tip of the seconds hand as well. That little red dot provides a splash of colour, and it works well with the 200 meters that's red as well on the dial, providing that little bit of colour against everything else is blue or white basically. Now you may wonder why I've predominantly been wearing this on the FKM rubber strap. Now when you buy the watch you do get a free strap, which is cool. I picked the blue one because I think it works best with the dial and the bezel insert. So first of all, not only is it cool that you get a free additional strap as well as a bracelet, but secondly I do feel that the FKM rubber strap is actually the better choice. Now don't get me wrong, I'm usually an out and out bracelet guy. If I get the choice of bracelet or a strap, I'm always wanting to put it on steel. That's just my personal preference. But in this case, I think that the rubber strap is the better choice between the two. Not only because of the bracelet not being quite as nice as I'd hoped, but also just because the rubber strap is just so good. It's beautifully soft, really supple, so comfortable on as well. Yes, the buckle is plain with no logo, but that's not really a big issue because the design is as such that you can't fit a logo on there. Another good positive about the strap is that it's not a dust magnet. Onto the bracelet now, and unfortunately I feel it probably is the weakness of the entire watch. Now, don't get me wrong, we do need to keep the price in mind, £195, and you do get a bracelet and also a rubber strap, but more on that in a moment. However, it's just left me wanting a little. I feel it probably could be a little bit better. There are other watches out there around the same price bracket with a better bracelet. So firstly, I don't know if you can hear, but when you shake it around, it's not as bad when it's actually being worn, but when you're handling it and you shake it around, it just jingle jangle a little bit. It sounds a little bit cheap and a little bit hollow. It hasn't got hollow end links. However, the end links seem a little bit loose. There's quite a bit of wiggle. They don't fit quite right with the case either. There's little gaps here and a little bit of movement. And also you get a pretty plain and uninspiring unsigned buckle as well. Now the buckle is double locking, which is nice and secure. It does feel good and secure, but it just, I don't know, it just feels a little bit on the cheap side, if you know what I mean. Like I say, yes, it will do. It is sufficient, but it's not enough to make me go, wow, this is a really great bracelet for the price. So that is a little bit of a shame, but it's good enough. It's also worth quickly noting as well that you do get the watch in this very cool little travel pack, which does seem watertight. I'm not sure officially if it is or not, but you have these big fat clips around 3 edges, and you open it up. Got a little warranty card and a bit of padding inside. So a decent little travel case, which no doubt will actually come in quite handy. So why don't we just have a very quick look at it under a macro lens. You can see here the finishing on the dial, that beautiful sunburst effect to the backdrop, logo printed on it, nice and crisp. That text in the bottom half too. Looking at the hands, you can see they're pencil shaped but have a sort of a chopped off top, nice and bold, and these massive chunky hour markers. If you can see as well, they're really deep. See how deep they are. I find that always so good to see when they're really good, thick applications. Shows good quality in build quality there. And then our polished border to the date wheel, date window too, and you can see our lovely little detailing on the seconds hand as well. So really good finishing all in all. A little blue rehaut as well, which you don't necessarily notice. That frames the dial really nicely too. Moving on to the sapphire, the ceramic bezel insert, you can see here are markings, all pretty neat as well. And you can see this beveled edge around the sapphire crystal as well, which meets up really nicely with the ceramic bezel insert too. Surrounding the bezel insert, there's a polished ridge connecting to the grip, which is really good, easy to use too. And then moving on to our crown, so you've got the AKIO logo pretty deeply engraved on the end there, and our grip, again, pretty easy to use despite having this very quite a lot of protection to it, so it's never going to get knocked off, that's for sure, but it does make it a little bit awkward to use, but you can use it just about. And then moving on to the side of the case, you see here we've got really nice shapely kind of Seiko vibes going through, of course. Moving on to the other side, see this join where the brushed finish meets up with the polished finish, really nice and neat there. Good work on the finishing. And then just flipping it over to the case back, it has picked up a few scratches because it is polished, and obviously the bracelet sits against it, but there's the logo engraved on the end there, on the center. Then we've got some various bits of specifics surrounding the outside, and the underside is brushed too. Now moving on to the bracelet, as you can see, if I give it a little bit of a wiggle, you can see we've got a bit of movement there. If I can just get that in focus. Bit of movement, see that? So that does sound a little bit cheap as well. And if you look at it on the underside, same again, you can see it just wiggle a little bit, which is a shame. However, the finishing of the links is nothing to complain about. Nice, decent, equal brushing. Look on the sides, see that they're all polished as well, so they provide a nice little glimmer, a splash of light. The underside of the links, more or less the same. Some simple brushing there. And the inside of the clasp too, we've got this quite thin arm, which could be a little bit nicer. Then you close it, and here's a very straightforward, simple buckle. I mean, this is the kind of buckle we do see quite a lot of. It's just a shame they opted against putting an engraved logo on that, because that would make quite a lot of difference. Moving on to the FKM rubber strap just briefly. Good to note, first of all, they have quick release pins, so that's good, always nice to see. The underside has this very interesting grip, does grip well against the skin, but not in an uncomfortable way. And then on the top, you can see just how really soft it is. And it's nice to see, you know, a little bit of detailing around the holes as well. They're not just straight boring holes. And has a slight curve, natural curve on the end as well, which again is a cool thing to see. It keeps it nice and snug against the other section of the strap when you're wearing it. And here we have the two keeper loops and plain polished buckle too. Nothing too exciting with that, but again, nowhere for a logo to be engraved in that instance. And we have this this keeper loop is secured in place as well, which is a nice little touch. Okay, there we go. So on to my final thoughts then. What do I think about the AKIO AK-01? Well, I mentioned in the outset there's a few things that I really like. Affordable watches, divers, British watch brands, and cool Seiko based watches, and this does tick all four of those points with big fat ticks. £195 is a really competitive price for a watch that first of all looks this good, but also with this decent amount of specs. Yes, the bracelet isn't the best, but that is literally the only thing that I can pick on. Everything else is absolutely brilliant. The finishing and build construction of the dial, of the case itself, spot on. And I feel that this is a real decent strap monster as well. You know, it's the kind of watch that you can easily put on a leather strap or a NATO strap as well, and it will look absolutely fantastic. At the end of the day, all that matters is the watch head. If I would probably suggest, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would suggest keeping it on the rubber strap, because the rubber strap is genuinely really beautiful as well, and that for me saves the watch as a whole, because you do get the free strap in addition to the bracelet. So yeah, I think it's an absolutely fabulous option. There's not too many homages to the Willard or the Seiko 6105, especially around this price point. So I think they've picked a really good model to base their first watch on. There are more models coming out next year, so I'm told, which is pretty exciting. Whether there'll be more Seiko homages or something a little bit more unique and a little bit more original, who knows. However, I am pretty excited by what AKIO have done so far, and also what they will be doing in the future. So yeah, really lovely watch for a great price as well. And I wish them all the best. So I think if you were to buy one, just be aware of the bracelet, but apart from that, it's a great watch. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, also comment your thoughts on this watch below. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.